So in this segment, we're going to be discussing the Labour Party suspending several MPs. Oh, we've got an interview from Sky as well, so let's have that in a second. But yeah, major misplay from the captain of misplays in Sir Keir Starmer. So let's have a listen to this clip from Kentish real quick.
This afternoon, an internal crackdown in the Labour Party by Keir Starmer. 4 MPs losing the Labour whip in the last hour or so. 3 others having their government jobs withdrawn after a pretty major rebellion a couple of weeks ago over disability benefits. Aggie Chambray is LBC's political correspondent with the very latest. Aggie.
Yes, that's right, Ben. So in the last half hour, it has been confirmed that 4 MPs, Neil Duncan Jordan, Chris Hinchcliffe, Brian Leishman and Rachel Mascal have all had the whip withdrawn.
So Rachel Mascal being one of the key people against the winter fuel allowance cut, which she was right to be, but also one of the key people against the disability cut that was meant to happen as well. So, you know, this is just a really shameless display. And the reason why they have done this today is because of the Parliament's going on recess, but also because of the report with the Afghan refugees that the UK, massively, spent massive amounts of money on to help trying to cover it up effectively. And so we're going to cover that story separately. This story, in my opinion, takes some precedence. So we're going to cover both, hopefully this week.
Suspended due to repeated breaches of party discipline, pending a future review. And as you say, 3 Labour MPs losing their government jobs, their trade envoy roles. Rosina Allen-Khan, Bell, Rubiaro Adi and Mohammed Yassin.
So I'm not familiar with all of them apart from Dr. Khan, who is a really, really good MP and, is very bright, not just because of medical, degrees and stuff like that, but generally she's very articulate, she's a very bright MP, and she was one of the ones that Starmer got rid of from the shadow cabinet originally, because they got rid of the shadow mental health secretary.
Follows a fortnight later after that welfare vote where over 120 MPs signed that reasoned amendment. And as I said in that tease there, they thought they had safety in numbers because just about a year ago, 7 Labour MPs voted against the government on the 2-child benefit cap and they all had the whip suspended. And since then, you've spoken to Labour MPs and they're a little bit worried about rebelling because they're worried about losing the whip. They basically thought, look, there's over 120 of us that have signed this reasoned amendment. Basically, 120 of us saying we will rebel and we are safe. And today, the proof of that is that they are not. And the government is basically trying to show that they are in control of the party, trying to regain that discipline that they had early doors just before MPs go off on summer recess. We've heard from...
Just to remind MPs, like, they could lose their job at any moment, really.
Couple of those MPs, Brian Leishman, who's been suspended, he said that he'd had the whip temporarily suspended, said he's a proud Labour member and remains committed.
So with this stuff, with the tactics they're using by targeting the ringleaders of these rebellions, it's the same tactics the Saudis use against women. So when women got the right to drive in Saudi Arabia, the people who mostly got arrested, around that time were the people who mostly pushed for those rights. So, similar tactics to Prince Salman.
John, over to you.
So they've got an interview here with Rachel Mascal.
Rather than angry, tell us what's happened this afternoon.
Well, I've had a really positive discussion with the Chief Whip about my values, about the purpose of politics, about where I come from in politics, whether that's from my faith or my experience and representing my constituents. And I come here with those values because my constituents have given me a mandate to speak up for them when they have need. And clearly, obviously, we've had a big debate over the value of disabled people who have no agency and no voice on so many occasions in our society. And I want to make sure that they're heard, their needs are met, and that's why I've been so strong at standing for disabled people. I have all my life. I worked as a physiotherapist. They've always been so heavy on my heart. So being able to be elected to this place is a privilege, to be able to ensure that we do the very best for disabled people, and that's really what I wanted to ensure through this.
You spoke about your faith and you spoke about lines that you cannot cross. Tell us about your faith and the lines you cannot cross.
Well, when the evidence was so strong that people would die as a result of these changes, having money taken away from them, people we know have serious mental health challenges, and we've got to protect those people in our...
With this stuff as well, like the government's own impact assessment reports told them that people would die as a result of these actions. So they knew that, there's no denial, they knew this would happen.
Society, I believe that. So I could not have on my conscience something where we know that people would take their own lives if they had insufficiency. And I spoke to my constituents because, like I reach into Downing Street and ministers here, I reach out into my constituency, and I met many disabled people who basically said their dignity was being taken from them, their very ability to provide was being taken. Even one person I spoke in the debate so passionately about, a constituent whose little girl was next to him, and he said, I just won't be here. So of course I'm going to speak up for those people who are voiceless if I did not. So that's why I make the statements that I do and really hold by that.
There are only 4 Labour MPs who've lost the whip, and yet there were 47, I think it was, rebels in that vote a few weeks ago. Are you annoyed that you've been singled out? If I may say, you're not one of the usual suspects. You're not a natural rebel, really, although you have on this issue, and I think you've spoken out also on the winter fuel payments.
So, the 2 policies that will take money away from people, she's voted against them.
What do you think about the fact that there's only 4 who've been suspended, that you appear to have been singled out as perhaps a ringleader of the rebels?
Well, first of all, I don't see myself as a rebel, but somebody that is prepared to fulfil my role here of holding the executive to account and speaking truth to power. And I'm somebody that is a bridge builder in life and really reaches in to a situation, and I hold my hand out to the Prime Minister and hope he takes that and wants to reach back, because I think it's really important that we work together. That's where the Labour Party came from. But, obviously choices have been made today. I'm not going to comment on that. But what I am saying is that there is a special purpose to the Labour Party, and that is to speak for those people in our society who have felt so disenfranchised because of 14 years of having broken public services and having an economy in tatters, and people are paying heavily for that. And of course I want to see Labour succeed. I've fought so hard all my life for this party, and that will continue, because I believe that Labour has got the ability and has got the opportunity to really transform people's lives. And
so I'll probably cover this in the live stream, which you would have already watched by this point, but you've got Ian Bryan saying, I'm appalled by the suspension. So this is a suspended Labour MP saying, I'm appalled by the suspension of Rachel Mascal, Neil Duncan, Jordan, Brian Leishman and Chris Hincliffe. Like me and 44 other Labour MPs, they voted against the policy that would push hundreds of thousands of disabled people into poverty. This isn't the first time the leadership has punished MPs for standing up for what's right. Last year, alongside 6 colleagues, I was suspended for voting against the cruel 2-child benefit cap. These decisions don't show strength; they show damaging. They are damaging Labour's support and risk rolling out the red carpet for reform. And so, in a situation where Starmer will keep hemorrhaging kind of support to the Green Party, and whatever Corbyn and Sultana's new party looks like, they've just given them, essentially several more MPs that could join that party instead. Because some of these MPs know they're not going to be around forever. They're not going to be given government ministerial jobs or anything like that. Why stay part of the Labour Party if you're not going to be there enough in 4 or 5 years' time? Ava Santina talking about how Rachel Mascal's reasoned amendment on welfare and rebellion or winter fuel is said to have upset the chess players in number 10. So, all of these people, these brilliant tacticians who think they're Carly Libman Waleed or Lelouch Britannia, you ain't it, Chief. You're a bunch of frauds who got in because you went against one of the worst Tory parties after a historic run of failure. That's why you're in there, not because you're genius tacticians. You guys are the Homer Simpson in the union battle. That's who you guys are. Andrew Fisher saying, I don't normally comment on comms, but today the news about the Tory cover-up and shambolic engagement of hundreds of Afghan people, then largely given legs by Badnutch's response. The vindictive twerps in number 10, chiefly Starmer, instead have decided to make it all about them. So I think they thought this news would slide under the rug, that people would be more concerned about the situation with with refugees in Afghanistan. If these chess players were so bright, they would have done this yesterday then. As soon as the news broke about the Afghanistan situation, what they should have done, if they were really bright, if they were really tacticians, is suspended the MPs then. Because that way it would have slid under the carpet, because this story, the Afghanistan story, in theory, is a lot bigger. In my opinion, is a lot bigger. But, the tactician Morgan McJoker didn't realise that. This from Sienna Rogers saying suspending 3 MPs who selected as new Labour MPs is quite something, especially when Starmer kept talking about how when a load of good candidates like Faisal Shaheen got deselected, Starmer was talking about, oh, we only select the best people. So much for that, pal. Party source suggests the suspensions are targeted at MPs who have been organisers of rebellions, including on welfare and on planning. So, on planning, I don't know what roles those MPs have had. I don't think much. But odd timing on number 10 has seemed to suggest it would do things differently now. Yeah, it's going to suspend MPs. It's going to be a lot more aggressive. That's what's happened here. Labour veteran Starmer's wave of removing whips from Rebel MPs, expelling Rachel Mascal is like expelling Mother Teresa. They are crackers. Absolute crackers. And I agree with that. This is just such a dumb move for them. What did she do apart from win an argument with the government? Effectively, she was right about policy. That's what this person here, John McTerran, points out. Make the whip's office look like bad news, but it's more than that. She's one of the reasons why Labour's poll ratings are not further in the ground, because she forced them to U-turn on policies that were incredibly unpopular. She should be one of the people in cabinet helping Starmer out, not on the backbenches on the opposition side. She's the one who's actually got a brain, unlike people like Rachel Reeves and Liz Kendall and bloody Wes Streeting and the rest of that, the cronies, Pat McFadden and all of that. This is a person who, on the moral sense, knew it was wrong, and politically knew it was wrong, to the point where she pushed against it very vocally to make sure her constituents knew whose side she was on. She won a seat by over 50% of vote share as well. In 1997, 47 Labour MPs voted against Blair's plan to abolish single parent benefit, with a further 100 abstaining. Not a single one of them had the whip removed. This absolute joker claiming it's a different world. How is it a different world? But that's the point. You had the people who voted with their conscience against a key government bit of legislation, and what did Tony Blair do? As much as I dislike Tony Blair, he was much better at coalition building than Starmer will ever be. This Chris Hinchcliffe statement, talks about apologies for the brief interlude. I've been busy in the House chamber, carrying on in my day job and making the case for a new generation of council housing to provide a secure start in life for every child currently in temporary accommodation. I remain proud to have been elected as a Labour MP, and I hope to return to the Labour benches. In the meantime, I'll continue to fight every day for the needs of my constituents. So, what he said is fine. Starmer last week defended his U-turn on disability benefits as being common sense, having listened to the concerns of Labour MPs. Now, some of those very same Labour MPs who have expressed concerns have been suspended. So, yeah, Starmer is, people claim like Corbyn's an authoritarian or whatever, right? Corbyn's too controlling, right? Starmer is worse. Starmer is much closer to Joseph Stalin than Corbyn will ever be, in the way that they kind of govern the party, because Corbyn didn't do shit like this. Jessica Elgott from The Guardian saying jolly happy recess wishes from PLP office just as 4 MPs get suspended. Beggars belief, says 1 MP. So you got this, you got the PLP saying have a good break in summer and all this stuff, and then some of you we won't be seeing next year. And then you got Ridge talking about how you could see Starmer's move to suspend 4 Labour MPs as a show of strength. A man with a big majority not putting up with any nonsense from unruly backbenchers, and of course it sends a message to others who might be tempted to rebel in future. But it's a risky move for a PM who has been criticised for being out of touch. And the thing is, the more MPs who are correct in their instincts he loses, the more difficult it's going to be for him to see U-turns in the future, because he's going to see it too late. Maybe by the time they've actually implemented the really unpopular changes. Rich says it's also a risky move for the PM. We mentioned the out of touch bit. And also there's a slightly confusing thing. The government did change policies after the welfare rebellion. They listened and they acted. And they must have thought the rebels were something. They also must have thought the rebels were correct in the end as well. Because it wasn't just Parliament that stopped things like the winter fuel allowance cut. It was also the public and the media, because lots of people called into their MPs. Same thing with the disability cuts. Lots of people called into their MPs, made a big deal about it. She says, my sense after reporting on numerous governments in Westminster for many years is that when you suspend MPs, it can either be a sign of strength or weakness. Depends on how strong you are at the time. I don't think that's true. I think it depends on what you suspend them for. I think if they're under investigation for something and you suspend them, that is a sign of strength, that you believe in parliamentary process. Whereas if you suspend them because they were correct on policy and you're mad because they are right, then there's a sign of weakness. And on this case, a sign of weakness. She says any potential fallout from this, and perhaps there will be none, will tell us a lot about Starmer's position. I don't necessarily agree with that. He's got a massive majority. But again, I think he's this is a big sign of weakness. I think especially suspending someone like Rachel Mascal, who's gone publicly to try and defend older people, the disabled, and things like that. This is a massive sign of cowardice from a guy who is so cowardly, in my opinion. But this goes out to the team who kept saying they're going to push Labour to the left. Good luck with that, guys. I did say that to you, during the election time, before the election time. Good luck, because for anyone to argue they didn't think Starmer was going to be this bad, I didn't think he'd be this bad, but I knew he was going to be pretty bad by the fact that he struggled in that original by-election in Hartlepool, showed no leadership credentials whatsoever, showed himself to be incredibly protected by his team, very bad political instincts, very bad team, in terms of picking a team, in terms of picking clowns like McSweeney. No tactical acumen whatsoever, acting like this guy's the Pep Guardiola of the politics world or something like that. Alistair Campbell, mate. This, all of this briefing, as much as I dislike Campbell, especially over things like the Iraq War and things like that, Alistair Campbell is still a much smoother political operator than any of the guys in Downing Street right now, because he would not let things get escalated to this degree. The idea that Labour MPs should have dealt with this quietly, they tried. They tried. The only time they go public is when it doesn't work privately. Because once you lift your head above that trench, you can get gunned down by the chief whip and the other goons like McSweeney. So this whole situation here is gross, absolutely gross. Doing it the day after the leaks from the Afghan refugee leaks as well shows that they think they're very bright, because they think one news story is going to overwhelm the other. But in reality, they were right but wrong about which story is going to overwhelm the other. Because the big story now is going to be about the Afghan refugees. It's going to be about Labour suspending MPs. Guarantee that. Guaranteed. So this is just incredibly stupid from Starmer and co. But it's to be expected, because like I said, this lot, they're not tactical geniuses. They're absolute clowns. Absolute clowns. Like you can see here, it is the more recent story, yes. But you can see here, what's the headline story? What's the big one? What's the one that's been plastered? It's Starmer suspends 4 rebel MPs for breaching party discipline. The Afghan story is here. Serious questions for Tories over Afghanistan. True. Where's the big one? It's this. And you've got Israel attacking, bases in Damascus in Syria. Shock. Absolute shock. But here's the big story. That's what you've given the media. This story's going to be overshadowed now. Well done, mate. Well done. The idea they care about anyone apart from themselves and political power is ludicrous to me. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.